Hey everyone, today I'm going to give you a full guide on how to get your first UI UX design job. This is going to be a long video where I give you all the best strategies that I've learned from getting my first job and building a successful career, and also for mentoring other designers and helping them get into the industry. Now, let's get into it. So, who is this guide for? Well, it's for three different kinds of people. First is anyone considering UI UX who want to get a roadmap of the whole process. Two is beginner designers who have started learning and are looking to develop a long-term plan for getting that first job. And three is designers who are a bit farther along and looking to troubleshoot their sticking points. Now, this guide's going to be broken into 6 different sections. First, I'm going to give you an expected timeline going from complete beginner to getting a job. 2 is strategies on UI UX education. 3 is building out your first portfolio. 4 is gaining experience before you start applying for jobs. 5 is going to cover job search strategy. And 6 is going to cover job interviews. And if you want to jump around to different sections, I'm going to add timestamps in the timeline. Now, before getting into the main information, there's a few things you need to know. The first is that the journey to get your first job is difficult, but it is doable. Even in today's job market, which isn't great, there are still designers succeeding at this every day and getting into the industry. So if one person can do it, then you can do it too. And the second is becoming a designer is completely worth it, in my opinion. The work you do is very interesting, the pay is great, and the job flexibility is fantastic. And 3 is the timeline to get your first job is not what most people think. There's this common misconception that I see all the time. A lot of people think that getting your first job in UI UX is this quick, easy process where you learn the fundamentals of UI UX design, make a portfolio, and then go right on to getting your first full-time job. And sometimes this does happen, but it's definitely not the norm. A more realistic timeline looks something like this, where you learn the fundamentals of UI UX design, make a portfolio, then you start doing some volunteer projects or internships. Then you move on to paid freelance projects. Then you build a version 2 of your portfolio, and then you're finally ready to get your first full-time job. And for many people, this takes about 12 months, sometimes even more. Now we'll cover the first step in this whole process, which is getting a UI UX education. You have a few options for doing this. The first is boot camps, and this is probably the most common option that people go with. So what are they? These are short programs that teach you fundamental UI UX design skills in 3 to 6 months. These can be online or in person. Many of the boot camps have part-time or full-time options available. And usually in here, you're going to be doing a mix of group projects and some solo projects. There's pros and cons of boot camps. The main pros, I would say, are you get very fast-paced learning. So these are designed to condense years of learning into a few months of teaching. You get a very structured curriculum. They usually offer a clear step-by-step approach to learning, guiding you through many of these key concepts and processes from start to finish. You're also going to get practical hands-on experience. These boot camps usually have an emphasis on project-based learning, allowing you to work on real-world projects and build a portfolio. Many of the boot camps will actually connect you with companies that need UX work done. And you actually get to solve real business problems and do work that's actually built and goes out to users. And the second is mentorship and career support. So you're going to get access to mentors during or after the program where they're going to help you with skill development and offering you feedback on your projects. And many of them offer career services such as job interview prep, portfolio reviews, and job placement assistance. And you're also going to get community and networking out of this. So boot camps often provide a built-in community of peers and instructors and alumni, which can be helpful for collaboration and support. It's definitely very helpful to connect with other designers when you're early on. They're very job oriented also. Boot camps are focused on helping you land a job with career guidance and support that's tailored to making you employable as quickly as possible. But there's also some cons. First one being cost. So boot camps can be pretty expensive. Prices typically range from $5,000 to $15,000. I'd say the median is somewhere around that $10,000 mark. And then there's also limited depth because you may not be able to go deep enough on certain advanced topics like design theory or user psychology or visual design. They might not also cover some of the more technical skills of design, like learning design software such as Figma. It's also an intense time commitment. So they're often very fast paced and can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're juggling other responsibilities like work or family. There's also quite a bit of job market competition with boot camps. And so boot camps have just gotten more and more popular. And the market has become crowded with other junior designers who have gone with a similar route. And so standing out can be a challenge. Now, the second option for education is academic programs. So these can be bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, or specialized certificates. So for bachelor's degrees, there are some undergraduate programs that offer UX, interaction design, and human-computer interaction as possible majors. All of these are going to be paths towards getting a UI UX or product design job, which, by the way, these are very similar job titles. And then for master's degrees, you can get a master's of science or master's of design in UX interaction design and human computer interaction. And then for specialized certificates, there are some universities out there that offer short programs in UX design that are about 6 months to a year long that are kind of similar to boot camps. I put together this list of universities with UX programs or similar. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but if you want to pause the video, you can look up some of these programs. And just like with boot camps, there's pros and cons of universities. So the main pro is going to be job readiness. So from what I've seen, designers with a bachelor's or master's degrees tend to have the easiest time getting a job after graduating. There's also going to be better networking opportunities. Universities often have strong industry connections, offering students internship opportunities and job placements. There's also better credential recognition. So a degree from a reputable university can carry significant weight, especially in larger, more well-known companies. And then you're also going to get more comprehensive knowledge. So university programs offer an in-depth understanding of design principles, psychology, and technical skills. And then for the cons, the main one is going to be time commitment. So most undergraduate programs can take 3 to 4 years, and graduate programs would be 1 to 2 years. The cost is also extremely high. University degrees, especially in the United States, can be extremely expensive, ranging from $20,000 to $50,000 per year. And then, although you're getting more comprehensive knowledge, they can sometimes be less focused on practical skills. So academic programs can focus more on theory and research than hands-on design work, which can leave students needing to do outside learning in order to be job ready. There's also limited options available. Since there's only a handful of universities that offer these programs, it could require moving across the country to attend one of these. And now the third option is going to be self-taught learning. So this is going to entail learning on your own through online courses, articles, and books, building out your own curriculum and deciding what to learn to prepare for real-world work, and then designing projects on your own to build out a portfolio. The main pros of self-taught learning are you get a lot of great flexibility with this approach. You can learn at your own pace, fitting your education around your schedule. You have the freedom to choose what to focus on and tailoring your learning to your interests and your needs. It's also extremely cost-effective. It's much cheaper than boot camps or university programs. And there's also many great resources available online and in books that are free or very low cost. And then you're going to get a lot of hands-on learning. So you can build out a portfolio through personal projects or eventually moving on to freelance work, which is a very practical way to build your skills. You can also stay up to date on the latest information out there. So you can quickly adapt to new tools, trends, and best practices, which may be more current than what's being taught in some traditional programs. And the main cons of self-taught learning are you're going to get a lack of structure. So without a clear curriculum, you may miss essential topics or struggle to create a cohesive learning plan. It's also harder to know what to learn next, leading to potential gaps in your knowledge. You also have limited feedback from mentors, so you won't have formal mentors or instructors that you would otherwise in a boot camp or university program, and making it harder to know what you need to improve. And then it can be hard to get constructive feedback from experienced designers. And then there's also networking limitations. You might miss out on the networking opportunities that come with university programs or boot camps like alumni network or job placement services. And then it can be more challenging to build out a portfolio. So building a portfolio on your own can be difficult if you don't have real-world projects or clients, which something like a boot camp would be able to connect you to. And then it can be difficult to figure out how to build a great portfolio without having help and guidance from a more experienced designer. Now I'll give you my overall recommendations for education. So I do believe that the most effective path is going to be academic programs. Students who go this route tend to have the easiest time finding jobs. This is primarily true for bachelor's and master's degrees, and less so for certificates. Certificates are going to be more similar to boot camps. Unfortunately, academic programs are not available for most people, but if it is, I would recommend going this route. The best solution for most people, I believe, is going to be boot camps. They're accessible to a wider range of people and have a strong track record of helping people break into UX. Most reputable boot camps have an 80 to 90% job placement rate within a year of graduation, and boot camps also tend to make people fully commit to becoming a designer. For me, I went to a boot camp and it did work out. I know many other people where it eventually worked out, although that path of getting that first job is going to be a little bit more difficult. Now we'll move on to the second step in this whole process, which is making your first portfolio. If you're unfamiliar, a UI UX portfolio usually consists of a few different things. It will have a summary of past projects. Usually you'll select 3 to 4 projects and create detailed case studies for each one. There is going to be information about you, such as your background and experience, design philosophy, and personal interests. Also, contact information and next steps. So you'll include your contact details, your resume, and a call to action to discuss potential opportunities. So portfolios are ideally going to be on a personal website. I included an example on this slide of what one of my past portfolio websites looked like. And there's a few things that you should know about portfolios. The first is that your portfolio represents you. They're going to be the main thing that employers or clients look at when they're deciding who they will consider for a job, or at least bring in for a first round interview. Your initial projects can all be conceptual. You don't need to do real world work to build out a great portfolio. You can create a portfolio full of conceptual or hypothetical work. And also, nobody reads your full portfolio. Employers or clients will usually scan your portfolio in less than a minute. So that means you need to have great visuals and it needs to be easy to scan in order to stand out. And also, the first version of your portfolio won't be great. It usually takes a while to build a portfolio that you're truly proud of. It's completely okay to build an initial version that isn't great and then work on improving it over time. The first version should be just the first step towards getting real world projects, which I'll discuss more later. Now, another important aspect of portfolios is choosing the right projects. So I think it's best to have a variety of projects that are going to be relevant to the kind of role or client that you're targeting, and also showcasing different skills. It's also better to focus on quality over quantity. So it's always going to be better to have 3 or 4 strong case studies than a dozen weaker ones. and the type of work that you include matters. So it's best to do projects that require a deep level of design thinking. Ideally, you're going to focus on designing products like a mobile or web app or even a complex website. And I'd recommend avoiding very simple web design projects like a brochure website or an informational website. Although when you're starting out, that's not always possible, but that's just something to work towards with your portfolio. Now, some information about case studies. So usually a case study is going to be broken into 6 main parts, although this can change depending on the case study. But normally it's going to be something like this, where you have an introduction, where you talk about the context, your role, and the challenge of the project, the problem that you're solving, the whole process that you're following, where you talk a little bit about research that was done, how you ideated on design, and how you tested your designs, and then talking about the final solution that you came up with, and then reflecting on the whole process, where you cover what you learned and any next steps or iterations that you'd want to do in the future. So this is just a quick overview on case studies, but if you want to learn more about this, I wrote a guide on how to write a perfect case study, which is going to be linked in the description, and it's completely free. Now, for where to make a portfolio, you have a few options. The first is using a simple website builder like Wix, Squarespace, Adobe Portfolio, or Notion. These are very easy to learn and get going with. You can use simple website builders like Wix, Squarespace, Adobe Portfolio, or Notion. These are all pretty easy to learn. And then there's more complex website builders like Webflow or Framer. This will enable you to build a better website, but there is more of a learning curve to these. And then there's also portfolio websites like Dribbble or Behance. I would say that these are good for freelancers, but if you're looking for a full-time job, you're probably going to want to have your own website. So my overall recommendation here is actually going to be to use a template on Webflow or Framer. That's the easiest way to make a portfolio that looks fantastic. There's many different templates that are available that are either free or very inexpensive. Now we'll cover the third step in this whole journey, which is on gaining experience to make you ready for a full-time job. So after somebody completes their initial education and they make a portfolio, there's a big dilemma that they face. There's multiple potential paths to go down. They could either start applying for full-time jobs right away, start doing real-world projects for free, try to do paid freelance projects, or just continue working on their skills on their own. So my recommendation on what to do next would change depending on the individual. I would say for graduates from academic programs, someone who has a bachelor's or a master's degree, they can usually start looking for a full-time job right away. Like I was saying before, these degrees go a long way with employers. But for bootcamp graduates or self-taught designers, I would say that getting a job right away is sometimes possible, but it is rare. Usually this happens for designers who came from an adjacent field like graphic design or even product management where there's many overlapping skills. But most will have to continue gaining experience and working on their skills before they're ready for a full-time job. This is what happened for me. So designers often struggle with how to gain experience without having a full-time job. But there are a few options available here. You could do volunteer projects. This would entail doing unpaid work for a company that does not have the means to hire a designer. This would be something like a new startup, a charity, or a nonprofit. You could do an apprenticeship, which would entail working under an experienced designer, usually someone who's a freelancer, who can mentor you while contributing to real projects. And this would be either unpaid or low pay. This is actually what I did after graduating from a boot camp. You could also do an internship. This would involve longer-term work for a company, usually a startup. It could be either part-time or full-time, and can sometimes be unpaid or low pay. Or freelance projects. This would be short or long-term paid work across any kind of industry. Now, when you're deciding how you're going to gain experience, it's important to consider what kind of projects will be most valuable for your portfolio and your resume. And there's a few different pieces of criteria to consider here. The first is design complexity. So that means the designs that you're working on are complex and require a higher level of UX strategy. The product is solving a clear problem, and you get to make meaningful contributions to the designs. And then the designs that you're working on are also developed and deployed. So that means the designs are built in code, and the product has a substantial number of users that will be interacting with your designs. And there should also be learning and iteration involved. That means you get to see clear user data after designs are built. You get to see clear metrics that determine the success or failure of designs. And you also get to iterate on the designs based on data and research. This is definitely ideal, but it's not always possible when you're starting out. But I would recommend at least trying to meet some of this criteria in the work that you do. When you're spending time gaining experience, I think that the timeline should look something like this. First, I would say spend about 3 to 4 months doing volunteer projects or apprenticeships. And then after that, once you build your skills a little bit more, then you move on to freelance projects or internships and do that for about 6 months. By that point, you should be able to build out a great portfolio and your skills should be much better. And then you can start looking for a full-time job. And usually this will be about 3 to 4 months of job searching for most people. Now I'll cover how to find each kind of project, starting with volunteer projects. So there's a few ways to do this. You can look for tech-specific volunteer websites. You can look at different sites like UX Rescue, Technology Ventures, Benefit Design, and Skilled Up Life. You can reach out to people in your network. You can talk to friends of friends, LinkedIn connections, acquaintances who are building apps or websites. You can use social media, so you can post about your UX journey and let everyone know that you're looking for new projects, and also cold outreach. You can email or direct message startup founders or entrepreneurs who are building an app and let them know that you want to volunteer in order to gain experience. And to find apprenticeships, you can reach out to freelance designers in your network. So if you know a freelance designer, tell them that you'd like to work under them in order to gain experience and receive mentorship. But if you don't personally know anyone in your network, you can reach out to freelance designers. You can find freelancers through LinkedIn, X, Dribbble, Behance, or Instagram and send them a message. You can get on a call with them and learn more about their work, find out if they're doing valuable projects regularly, and offer to start with a trial project and see if it is a good fit. And then if that works out, you can do longer term work with them. And now to find internships, you have a couple of options. I think that the best option is going to be to try to do an internship through a small startup. Usually startups like this aren't going to post internship opportunities, so it's on you to reach out to them and try to create an internship opportunity with them. So to do this, you can email or direct message founders of small startups, ideally with less than 10 employees, who do not currently have a designer working for them. Usually a startup like this is going to have a non-designer doing their design work, so they're going to be very open to having design help. You can let them know that you're looking for an internship opportunity, offer to do free trial work for them and see if it's a good fit, and then if it is, you can eventually negotiate some paid work later on. To find startups like this, you can look on sites like Wellfound and Crunchbase. And then another option here is to apply directly to internship postings. These are normally going to be for larger companies that actually post these roles. But I think it's worth noting that these internship opportunities are usually going to be very competitive because there's not many available. So oftentimes they're going to get hundreds of applications, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to get one of these. So it's still worth taking the time to apply, but I do think you're going to have better luck trying to create your own internship opportunities through outreach. And now some info on finding freelance projects. I think that when you're starting out with freelancing, the best way to get going with this is to use a freelancing platform. Upwork and Fiverr are the primary freelancing platforms for UI UX designers. I would say that Upwork tends to have the best projects and clients. It allows you to send in proposals for projects that you're most interested in. This is the platform that I've had the most success with, and I was primarily finding my clients through when I first started. I also have many videos on my channel about how to succeed on Upwork, so if you're interested in that, just go check out those videos. But Fiverr is going to be better suited for smaller projects with a fast turnaround. It allows you to create a profile and clients can reach out to you about projects. Clients do pay lower rates, but it can still be valuable for gaining experience. And then you can also find projects through networking. So to do this, let everyone know that you're looking to start freelancing. Friends or friends of friends might have projects for you. You can also go to tech meetups in your area, and that could also be a good opportunity for finding clients. But like I was saying before, I would recommend moving on to freelance projects after you have some experience, because if you're brand new, it is going to be much harder to succeed with finding freelance projects and succeeding once you actually get a client. Now we're going to cover the fourth and final step in this whole process, which is finding a full-time job. In order to succeed in finding a full-time job, you first have to understand the perspective of recruiters and hiring managers and what they're going to be looking for when they're deciding who they're going to bring in for a first-round interview. So they are going to be sorting through 100+ applications at a time. They are overwhelmed by the number of applicants, so they have to quickly decide who will get that initial interview. And when they're doing this, they have a few main priorities. For junior roles, they're usually going to be looking for some sort of relevant experience and standout work in portfolios, and they're also searching for any obvious mistakes. They're going to quickly pass on a candidate that has sloppy portfolios, or resumes. So what's actually needed to get a job interview? Well, I think that there's really only three main things that need to be focused on here. The first is an excellent portfolio. You need to focus on just really nailing 3 to 4 in-depth case studies, ideally with real-world work. And also having a very well-structured resume that has clear bullet points that demonstrates results in past projects, and also constantly applying for jobs. So this is definitely a numbers game, so you're going to need to send out hundreds of applications in order to get your first job. Now we need to talk about what actually makes a portfolio stand out. And what I've written here I think are the most important things to focus on. The first is having clean visuals and layout. So portfolios need to look professional at first glance. The visual layer is what makes people take a closer look at the case studies. I've seen many designers out there who have great case studies, but they aren't getting any interviews because the portfolios themselves look too sloppy. And the work that you're showing needs to look production level. So that means the interfaces that you're showing throughout your case studies need to look like they can actually be used in a real product. That doesn't mean you need to be the best UI designer, but there can be no obvious mistakes in your work. And then in your case studies, you need to show a very clear design process. The case studies don't need to be long, but they should clearly show a problem that you aim to solve and how you solved it. And then the portfolio needs to be easily scannable. Since portfolios are quickly reviewed, it should be easy to get to the main idea of what you did through headlines, visuals, and screenshots. If you want more in-depth information on portfolios, you can check out some of the videos that I've made on my channel, and also that guide that I made on writing perfect case studies, which is going to be linked below. Now we'll cover the optimal job search strategy. I think this is a topic that can often be overcomplicated. So in my opinion, I think that you should be spending your time mainly doing these things. The first is to apply to every job that seems somewhat in reach. So send out applications every day to jobs that are asking for less than 5 years of experience. And when you do this, a low response rate is completely normal. And then reach out on LinkedIn after applying to every job. So connect with people on LinkedIn who work at companies that you applied to. That can be designers, design managers, and recruiters. Send them a message introducing yourself, expressing your interest, and then add a link to your portfolio in that message just to make sure they don't miss it in the whole pile of applications. And then I think you should also connect with every recruiting firm that recruits for design. Many companies will hire third-party recruiting companies to fill their roles, and these companies want designers to reach out to them. You can find the contact forms on their website or find tech recruiters on LinkedIn. Now, since your first job search is going to be one of the most difficult things you do as a designer, we should talk about what's going to be expected here for pretty much everyone. The first is a lot of rejection and frustration. Getting rejected often is completely normal, so it's important to stay persistent and continuing to improve. You should also expect something like a 5 to 10% response rate. A good junior designer with a great portfolio can expect to get one interview for every 10 to 20 applications submitted. And you should also expect a lot of time and effort in order to succeed. The job search needs to be treated like its own job. 20 plus hours per week is usually going to be required to make progress. There's many designers who give up during the job search process because they don't realize how difficult it actually is. So if you can go into it knowing that this is normal for it to be difficult, you're a lot more likely to stick it out and eventually get that full-time job. And I also wanted to mention, it's a good idea to have another job while you're job searching so you don't run out of money and you can spend as much time on the job search as you need. Now, once you're at the point where you're getting interviews, you can expect the typical interview process to be something like this. There will likely be a first round that's an initial screening. That's often with a recruiter or HR representative. And the focus here will be on verifying your qualifications, discussing salary expectations, and gauging interest. Round 2 will normally be with a hiring manager. These are normally a one-on-one where you focus on skills, experience, and a portfolio walkthrough. Round 3 will often be a team or a panel interview where you meet with team members, stakeholders, or cross-functional partners. And then they're going to focus on assessing your collaboration style, cultural fit, and technical skills. And then the 4th round is normally going to be a decision-making interview, which may involve higher-ups like directors or VPs, and they are going to be confirming that you're the right fit and addressing any final concerns. This process can change from company to company, but this is normally what I've seen in interviews. Also wanted to note that some companies may have you do a take-home design challenge, but they do seem a little bit more rare in today's job market. And finally, we're going to talk about the most important part of the job search process, which is succeeding in interviews. Succeeding in a UX interview really comes down to how you prepare before the interview. So there's a few things that you need to do. The first is to prepare a polished slide deck for one of your case studies. So portfolio walkthroughs are a common part of UX design interviews, and a common mistake that people make here is just presenting the case study that they have on their website, which is going to be very difficult to follow for your interviewers. So it's best to use a well-organized slide deck to present your work. You'll highlight your key points clearly and concisely, and that'll have maximum impact. You also need to prepare to talk about all major design decisions. The most crucial interview questions will be about why you made certain design decisions in your work. I think the best way to get ready for this is to paste your case study into ChatGPT and have it ask you questions about your design decisions to simulate an interview scenario. I've been trying this out a lot lately, and a lot of the questions that it comes up with are very realistic and can be expected in an actual interview. You also need to prepare to discuss experiences from your design journey. Many questions will be phrased as, can you tell me about an experience where blank? You should write out 20 plus significant things that you have encountered in your work where you have overcame a challenge, learned something, or had a breakthrough. Again, you can use ChatGPT to simulate some of the questions that will be asked here. And then you should also prepare relevant questions for each interview. At the end of every interview, there will be time to ask your interviewers questions, and the specific questions you ask really go a long way. So think of unique questions about each company and your interviewers before each interview. And then another important part of job interviews is being personable and having great energy. So your interviewers will also be assessing whether you seem enjoyable to work with. It's a good idea to do whatever you need to do to get in a good headspace before your interview, because that makes you come across a lot better when you're actually talking to them. So I would recommend doing something like 15 minutes of meditation, maybe some exercise, or calling a friend to get in a good social flow. And another important component of succeeding here is to treat job interviews as a skill. So you can improve significantly at job interviews, so don't get discouraged if they aren't going that well at first. Spend time reading or watching content about UX interviews. There's so much helpful information about this on the internet. Also, ask for feedback from your interviews or recruiters anytime you get a rejection. It can be kind of hard to do, but I promise that will make you better. Also, practice makes perfect. So every interview you do is an opportunity to improve, and you will get much better at this over time. And that brings us to the end of this guide. I think that these are the most important things that I could tell any designer who's just getting started with this. So I think that if you follow this whole process, you will eventually get that job offer. So I hope that's helpful. And if you're just getting started with this, I wish you all the best and encourage you to subscribe to this channel because I have a lot more helpful content for junior designers coming soon. So thank you and see you next time.